What's up, it's the Coaster Craze, and before I get to the actual video, I just wanted to briefly touch on a little bit of update about my amusement park plans. I mentioned them in the 2020 amusement park plans video I made last month, but there are some updates, and I'm super excited to announce I know the actual date that I'm going to my first park of 2020 and of the entire 2020's decade, and it's a good one. So on March 28th, I'll be at Six Flags Fiesta Texas in San Antonio, Texas. Never been to the state before, never been to Six Flags Fiesta Texas, and I cannot wait. So if you're going to be there, make sure to leave a comment down below. We'll try to meet up, that'd be awesome. I'm crossing my fingers the coronavirus doesn't get worse and cancels everything where Six Flags has to close. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm super looking forward to this. And then after that, shortly after, I'll probably hit up my home park, Six Flags America. Maybe the next weekend, because I will be in Texas, of course, for the opening weekend of Six Flags America. Anyway, let's get on to the video. Wind roller coasters used to be by far the most prevalent type of roller coaster on the planet for the majority of the 20th century, but that really started to decline with the birth of the tubular steel roller coaster in the 1950s with Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland, but they didn't really start to get major traction, I would say, until the 70s, when you started to see more steel coasters being built than wind coasters, and that trend only continued exponentially, becoming to the point where now in 2019. So I got a quick confession to make. I actually made this video, recorded it last year in 2019, but all the points still stand. So just a quick update on the state of wind coasters in 2020. There's only 2 new ones that are coming to the entire world this year. The first one actually already opened in February, Texas Stingray by GCI, that's going to SeaWorld San Antonio in Texas. And then the second one is Leviathan, a Gravity Group Woody, that's going to SeaWorld in Australia. It's opening all the way down in December. So these are 2 pretty large scale ones, which is nice to see. A little bit of an improvement over last year, but it's still the same scenario in that it's only a couple new wind coasters per year, usually 1 in America, 1 to 2 internationally. And to put that in terms of the amount of closed wind coasters, in 2019, 7 total wind coasters in the entire world either closed or became standing but not operating, with likely closure happening. That's very unfortunate. I will say though that it's inflated a bit by the closure of Indiana Beach and Fantasy Island, but nevertheless, there's still a lot more wind coasters closing each year than opening, which obviously is a huge problem as the number of wind coasters begins to dwindle. It's really sad to see, and I get that steel roller coasters have more capabilities, even with RMC and GCI trying to rejuvenate the wooden roller coaster industry with their awesome layouts, and they do a great job for sure, particularly RMC with Lightning Rod, Wildfire, Goliath, etc. Those are great, but they're not really traditional wind coasters at all. GCI definitely has a great mixture of the traditional and the modern, with coasters like Thunderhead and Lightning Racer, but nevertheless, there's very little of these traditional out-and-back wind coasters being built. And when you go to parks all the time, their wind coasters are really old. For example, Dorney Park, their one wind coaster, Thunderhawk, is from the 1920s. That's crazy. King's Dominion, they haven't gotten a wind coaster since 1994, I think, with Hurler, and that coaster is now a steel RMC as Twisted Timber. So their newest wind coaster is from the early 80s, and that's Grizzly. So it's crazy to see this trend of all these wind coasters either being torn down, turned into steel hybrid RMCs, and then also just almost none being built. So how did this problem start? Definitely because people were enamored by steel roller coasters in the 70s, like I said before, with the rebirth of Loops with Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 1975, and that only continued. Then steel coasters could launch in the late 70s with the Schwarzkopf flywheel launches on their shuttle coasters, and these trends really just started to pick up more and more, especially in the 90s with the different types of steel coasters, like when B&M created the inverted, or in the 80s when the stand-up was created by Togo, and so on. It just got to the point where wind coasters were just looked at as old and forgotten about. They experienced lower ridership at lots of these parks, and so the parks either scrapped them or just decided not to get any new ones. And then RMC came around in 2011 and built New Texas Giant out of the old Texas Giant wind coaster at Six Flags Over Texas. And that was great, right? It's an amazing roller coaster from what I've heard. And the old Texas Giant, it wasn't really a great wind coaster, so it made sense. RMC's purpose wasn't to just tear down all these old wind coasters and make them awesome new steel ones, but it was to tear down ones that were bad and really poorly received, like Mean Streak, Hurler, like I said before, Georgia Cyclone, and so on. And that's great. None of these were considered classics, and they were all fairly new. By that I mean like built in the 90s or 2000s or stuff, not like from the 60s or older, because that would just be very bad. And luckily they haven't built an RMC out of a super old wind coaster, but sadly they've started to build them from wind coasters that aren't that poorly received. A big example which really sent the coaster community into kind of chaos was when they made Roar at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom into Joker, which is widely considered the worst RMC. Still a great ride because it's an RMC, but it's not like amazing like ones like Twisted Timbers or Steel Vengeance. And Roar was pretty well received. Most people thought it was still fairly smooth. It had the Millennium Fire Trains. It's a Great Coasters International coaster, so it's not like some super old one. It's from the late 90s, and I've grown up riding Roar at Six Flags America, which is widely considered to be the inferior version as it's rougher, and I love Roar. I would be kind of sad to see it turn into RMC, even though I would love an RMC at my home park. So that just makes me think, how good is the Roar at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom? Or more specifically, how good was it? Because sadly, it is gone now, and they completely lack a wind coaster. So what should happen from now on? I think that they should start building more and more wind coasters as people grow kind of nostalgic and realize that their home park is kind of starting to lose them and only has 1 or 2 left, and some parks have none, like Discovery Kingdom. And it's just a bad look. When people imagine a roller coaster, often what comes to mind is a classic one like the Cyclone. It's still probably the most famous roller coaster in the world, and that's saying something. That wind coasters still have a place in Americana specifically, and just roller coasters throughout the world. They were the original roller coasters, and yes, most of the best roller coasters in the world are steel ones. There are exceptions like the prefabricated ones by Intamin, RMCs, GCIs, Gravity Group ones, and those are great because they're very modern. Those should keep on being made, which they are, which is great. Obviously, they're not as prolific as steel coasters because they require a lot of work to be made and a lot of maintenance too, so parks aren't going to just invest in them super readily, especially because lots of these are very expensive because they're specialty wind coasters. They're not just very basic ones, you know? So like these inversions or massive wind roller coasters like El Toro are going to cost a lot of money, so only bigger parks are going to get them, and they're not being made very often, which is fine. That makes sense. But the problem is when the more average wind coasters are being almost never made. They got to start making these really old-fashioned ones. I think it was really sad when PTC just started to make trains instead of their roller coasters because they made some phenomenal rides, and they're one of the fixtures of wooden roller coaster manufacturing in America and worldwide. And it would be so awesome if they came back with some wooden roller coasters because I know so many parks that need just a classic out and back woody that features a ton of airtime, like Wild One at my home park. Six Flags America's Wild One is one of the best coasters in the park easily. It's such a fun ride, and that and Roar really makes Six Flags America a great park in my opinion. The wooden roller coasters are one of the best aspects of it and really just shows you the capabilities of wooden roller coasters. Maybe they're not as long, fast, or tall as steel roller coasters, and most of them don't go upside down or have different ride types, but they have a certain place at amusement parks. They fill a great void. Parks without wind coasters are severely lacking always, and I think every park needs at least one great wind coaster, and the parks with multiple ones really just stand out. So I'm really hoping this trend reverses. I really do think it will too, because people often will start to just realize, wait a second, there's like no wind roller coasters left. This has got to stop. Right now I think there's a void in the industry of just a pure classic wind coaster that was left vacant after PTC and other old wind coaster manufacturers left the business mostly. And I'm really hoping a new startup company comes up, not like RMC where they're making these really innovative rides, but just making throwback rides because there's a place for them, and I think people will definitely appreciate in the future. So for my final update of the old video, I want to say that I feel this pattern of a couple new wind coasters per year, some maybe larger scale, some smaller scale, will continue for the foreseeable future, maybe the next 5 or even 10 years, where it's really just GCIs and Gravity Groups being built, primarily Gravity Groups. Maybe some years we'll get like 5 total wind coasters or something like that, but usually it's like 1 per year in America at least. And then after that, maybe there'll be that resurgence as we see the number of new wind coasters is really a lot less than the ones closing, because I don't see the amount of wind coasters closing really slowing down anytime soon, because there are a lot of bad old one coasters out there. So then maybe that new manufacturer that I talked about, or some new thing that would happen that would bring back the neo-traditional or traditional one coaster just in some capacity, maybe that will happen in 10 years. But we don't know at this point, unfortunately. All we know is that the one coasters amount is decreasing, but at least the ones that are being built are still quality. Now let's get back to the video. I'd love to hear your take in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe for more awesome roller coaster videos from the Coaster Craze, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.